Who doesn't love a good origin story and a good time lapse? NFL stadiums are built on a variety of previously used or unused plots of land. Some were older stadiums, some were factories, some were landfills, but they are all interesting. What was every NFL stadium before it was built is coming up right after this. Is this football season making it hard for you to sleep? Well, I have a solution for you. Bear Mattress, the sponsor of this video. Head to bearmattress.com/5points and use code 5points to get 40% off your mattress. Hey, the football season is up and down. However, Bear Mattress and a good night's sleep is something you can count on. With my Bear Mattress, I sleep amazing every night, even when my team loses, which is a lot. Bear is a premium mattress designed to upgrade your sleep, improve your lifestyle and overall quality of life, and it's conveniently shipped to your door for free. What you do first is take the Bear Sleep Quiz, which matches you to the perfect mattress based on your body type and sleep preferences. My results, I'm a side sleeper, so they put me in the Bear Original King Size Foam Mattress. It was so easy to set up. I've had it for nearly 2 years now, and I love sleeping on it. It's as firm as the day I got it. All of Bear mattresses are GreenGuard Gold certified and CertaPure US certified, so you can sleep safely and soundly, knowing there will be no harmful off-gassing, and it is fiberglass free. They let you try it for up to 120 nights so you can make sure that you love it. I love my Bear mattress and I think you would too. So if you're looking to upgrade your sleep, head to bearmattress.com/5points and use code 5points to get 40% off your Bear mattress. First off, these are in chronological order as the later stadiums have better time lapses, so it's kind of like an iceberg video. Also, be warned that doing the research for this was a total bear, especially for the older stadiums. So if there are any substantial inaccuracies, I will put them in a comment down below. Let's get into it. Lambeau Field, Green Bay, Wisconsin. Before Lambeau Field opened in 1957, it was, get this, farmland, specifically a cornfield in Wisconsin, kind of in the middle of nowhere-ish at the time. Now it's surrounded by a neighborhood, and though most of the parking lot is paved, there are still some flat areas of green that evoke its old farm days. I bet they had no idea back then that all this would happen. Arrowhead Stadium, Kansas City, Missouri. There isn't much information as to what the site of Arrowhead was before the stadium complex was built in 1972. It was simply an empty plot of land located near I-70 and I-435 in Missouri that was covered in vegetation. Not much has changed today. It's still a two-stadium complex surrounded by forest and flanked by the aforementioned two interstates. For one of the loudest NFL stadiums, it has a pretty quiet origin story. Highmark Stadium, Orchard Park, New York. Originally called Ridge Stadium, Highmark was built on a 113-acre plot out in Orchard Park, New York, miles away from downtown Buffalo. Due to competing prospective sites and a threat from Ralph Wilson to move the team to Seattle, Erie County put together a stadium proposal on land they already owned that they had intended to build a community college on. I guess they ended up educating the residents on bittersweet pain. Caesars Superdome, New Orleans, Louisiana. The Superdome was built right on top of the site of the old Tulane Stadium. Tulane Stadium had already hosted 3 Super Bowls and was demolished in order to make room for the aforementioned Superdome. However, before that was built, it was part of Tulane University's campus. And before that, it was a portion of Louisiana in Paul Fouché's land, which was an 1800s plantation near the river that cultivated sugar. Now it makes sense as to why they call it the Sugar Bowl. Miami Gardens, Florida. After years of controversy around the abandonment of the Miami Orange Bowl, Miami Gardens was built on a separate site in 1987 and was originally named Joe Robbie Stadium. Joe Robbie himself privately funded the huge development project and purchased the land from Emil and Lawrence Morton, which was an empty plot near the Dade County and Broward County line near Lake Lucerne. Not really that interesting, probably a bunch of palm trees and grass. There were some houses nearby, but it was mostly a patch of dirt. Everbank Stadium, Jacksonville, Florida. Everbank Stadium, opened in 1995, stands atop the remnants of the old Gator Bowl, Jacksonville's first football venue that was built way back in 1927. Originally known as Fairfield Stadium, at one point it was a high school field that was eventually expanded to a seating capacity of over 80,000. When Jacksonville was awarded the Jaguars, it was demolished in 1994 and replaced with what is now Everbank Stadium. Bank of America Stadium, Charlotte, North Carolina. Bank of America Stadium was built in 1996 in Charlotte proper, where up until then the land was occupied by the Good Samaritan Hospital, which served a predominantly African American community. The hospital and surrounding homes in the neighborhood were all demolished to make room for the stadium, which the Panthers still occupy to this day. Northwest Field, Landover, Maryland. We don't know what's going to happen to Northwest Field in 6 years when it's finally replaced. However, before it was built in 1997, it was a dairy farm, specifically the Wilson Dairy Farm in Landover, Maryland. Jack Kent Cooke bought the land and then tried to rename the area Raljon after his two sons. Kent promptly died and never actually saw a game there. And nobody calls the town Raljon, it's freaking Landover. Raymond James Stadium, Tampa, Florida. Raymond James has an interesting story as it was first built on the former parking lot of Tampa Stadium, which hosted 2 Super Bowls. You can still see the outline of the old stadium in current photos, as that became a parking lot, essentially trading places with the new digs. However, RJ wasn't just built on an old parking lot. It was actually once the site of Al Lopez Field, a spring training baseball facility that was open in 1954 and was adjacent to Tampa Stadium until it was demolished in 1989. And before that, Al Lopez Stadium was built on Drew Field, a World War II era airfield in West Tampa, a large grassy clearing. So planes used to land on Raymond James Stadium. I did not know that, and now you do, nerd. M&T Bank Stadium, Baltimore, Maryland. Now we're getting interesting. M&T Bank was built on the site of the previously closed W.M. Nave and Company piano factory, which shut down during the Great Depression in the 20s. W.M. Nave & Co. eventually became part of Samick Musical Instruments, which still operates today. However, the huge factory sat abandoned for years in Baltimore, but in the late 90s, it was razed and replaced by the stadium. There are various tributes to the old factory, both inside and outside, with a keyboard mosaic on the sidewalk on the southwest corner of the stadium. Huntington Bank Field, Cleveland, Ohio. Huntington Bank Field was built right on top of old Cleveland Municipal Stadium after they tossed it in Lake Erie, of course. The site originally was flat land next to the Great Lake, which was near an industrial area of Cleveland, a perfect site for a factory of sadness. Huntington Bank will be replaced in 2029 by a new stadium in Brook Park. Nissan Stadium, Nashville, Tennessee. While you can see new Nissan Stadium being built right now, the current one was built on land in Nashville's East Bank, which was primarily used for industrial purposes. It looks like it might have been a junkyard and a warehouse at one point, but that was all cleared out by 1998. Interesting that they chose a site so close to the riverbank, as yes, the field did flood back in 2010. Paycor Stadium, Cincinnati, Ohio. Paycor Stadium actually did not replace Riverfront Stadium directly, as that became part of Great American Ballpark. No, Paycor, originally called Paul Brown Stadium, was built in a nearby industrial area, which appears to be an old rail yard, warehouse, and parking lot. None of this former site or much of what was in the area before is left today. Acrisure Stadium, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Acrisure Stadium was built in the old parking lot of Three Rivers Stadium, but according to sources before Three Rivers, way before that, it was a junkyard and a service yard. It seems pretty common to put a stadium in an industrial district of a city, as most of the land is already flat. like your mom. Empower Field at Mile High, Denver, Colorado. The name Empower Field at Mile High gives you a clue as to what the site was before, but it doesn't tell you the full story. Yes, Empower Field replaced Mile High Stadium, which hosted both the Broncos and the Rockies, but that was built on top of Bear Stadium, a minor league baseball park which was constructed in 1948. And then Bear Stadium was built on top of a former landfill, Ford Field, Detroit, Michigan. The land for Ford Field was built on the site of a former J.L. Hudson Company warehouse, which was constructed in the 1920s and wasn't just incorporated into the stadium's design, it's actually part of the structure. And you can see it clearly on the stadium's south end. J.L. Hudson was a large department store chain that eventually became the Dayton Hudson Company. It's like if Macy's was part of a stadium. The buildings are used for team offices. It's just like the Camden Yards of the NFL. NRG Stadium, Houston, Texas. Built right next to the still standing Astrodome, NRG Stadium is the only place the Texans have ever called home. Easy spot, right? As it was the parking lot for the Astrodome before it was built. But before both stadiums were constructed, this was just undeveloped land in Houston, which is already big and flat. Gillette Stadium, Foxborough, Massachusetts. Gillette Stadium was opened in 2002 and replaced the old and ugly Foxborough Stadium, which opened in 1971. That was built on land owned by the Bay State Raceway, aka Foxborough Raceway. Robert Kraft bought this land before he bought the team in 1988, and when the owners were struggling financially, he swept in and bought the Patriots in 1994, as he already pretty much owned the team. Lumen Field, Seattle, Washington. Just like a lot of other stadiums on this list, Lumen Field replaced its predecessor. In this case, that was the Kingdome. The Kingdome was imploded to make way. However, it was built next to King Street, adjacent to Pioneer Square. I never knew that that's why it got the name the Kingdome. It's King Street. In 1968, the area was an empty space next to a rail yard, and you can see evidence of that industrial history in renderings of Lumen Field today. Soldier Field, Chicago, Illinois. Soldier Field was built on top of Soldier Field. In what many would call a disastrous rebuild, the new Soldier Field kept the outside of the old Soldier Field, but it was such a drastic rebuild, it lost its historical site designation. The original Soldier Field was built on an empty field just south of Grant Park in 1923. Lincoln Financial Field, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The area where the Link was built has long been home to many stadiums in South Philly. However, the previous site of JFK Stadium was chosen to house the Xfinity Center, where the Flyers and the Sixers play. The land Lincoln Financial Field was built on was occupied by a building called the T Warehouse, which had over 1 million square feet and was owned by a guy named Don Tesoro. The city bought it and demolished it, and now you have the Link. A little fishy. They didn't have to destroy that warehouse. State Farm Stadium, Glendale, Arizona. Built in 2006, State Farm Stadium replaced, according to Google, a mix of dirt farms, alfalfa fields, and residential homes. Yo, what is a dirt farm? You can't grow dirt, you stupid fucks. Basically, this stadium was put out in the middle of the desert, something nobody has ever thought of before. Lucas Oil Stadium, Indianapolis, Indiana. Lucas Oil gets its interesting shape not from the RCA Dome, which it replaced. No, that would be too simple. The RCA Dome, which lasted from 1984 to 2007, was built on the site of 3 industrial warehouses that were in downtown Indianapolis. The area was known as Industry Square, and Lucas Oil's design is an homage to that era. Yeah, it all makes sense. AT&T Stadium, Arlington, Texas. Yes, AT&T Stadium is built near the ballpark, now Choctaw Stadium, and near where Globe Life Park is. And even though the space seems wide open and roomy, Jerry World was actually built on a neighborhood. Yes, the city of Arlington purchased land that was previously homes and apartment complexes and demolished them to make room for Palpatine's palace. The homes look pretty modest. I hope they got a good deal. Interestingly enough, what is now a parking lot for Globe Life Field was once a trailer park. MetLife Stadium, East Rutherford, New Jersey. MetLife replaced Giants Stadium, which at times was called the Meadowlands. You know, when that other team played there. Giant Stadium was built upon land in East Rutherford that was mostly swamp and industrial. That seems fitting. Levi's Stadium, Santa Clara, California. Open in 2014, Levi's Stadium was placed on an overflow parking lot for the nearby California Great America theme park. The park is still in operation, and I guess they didn't need all that extra parking in the end. US Bank Stadium, Minneapolis, Minnesota. US Bank replaced the Metrodome, but before the Metrodome started construction in 1979, they needed to clear out some older buildings. Those were the Metro Medical Center, a gas station, and a juvenile detention center. Now you know that US Bank is on the site of a former juvie. Mercedes-Benz Stadium, Atlanta, Georgia. Yes, it was appropriate to replace the Georgia Dome with Megatron's butthole in 2017, but it's actually only partially on the old dome's footprint. 2 churches were demolished when the new stadium was built. Maybe that's why they're cursed. The historic Friendship Baptist and Mount Vernon churches were leveled in 2014, and to make room for the stadium, an entire overpass of MLK Boulevard was reconfigured. And then before all that, the Georgia Dome was built in a neighborhood called Lightning. SoFi Stadium, Inglewood, California. Inglewood. SoFi Stadium had a hefty price tag, over $6 billion, and some of that included purchasing and tearing down Hollywood Park Racetrack, which had been there since 1938. Not only were both tracks completely removed, but all the stables too. I don't know what they did with the horses. They were probably all shot in front of a gleefully sadistic Stan Kroenke. Allegiant Stadium, Paradise, Nevada. Finally, we have Allegiant Stadium, which was erected on a small patch of what was supposedly part of the Paradise Valley landfill, but the dirt hadn't been disturbed for at least a decade before the new stadium was built. Prior to it being a patch of dirt, the land was more than likely molten rock, which solidified to make the Earth's outer crust. And prior to that, the Earth was just a globulous mass of molten matter that we have no real idea how it got here. And prior to that, there was a big bang at the beginning of the universe that surely involved your mom. Well, there you have it, every NFL stadium's origin story. Wow, this was a monster video to make. So I hope you like, comment, and of course, subscribe for more interesting videos on sports. I'm 5 Points Vids, and you made it to my next video.